it works and it's helpful. It's like, even if your ultimate goal of getting back together with your wife weren't to work out, you come out of it knowing that you can stand on your own 2 feet and know that you gave it a shot. I'm kind of surprised how much progress I've made in such little time. Like for me, it's definitely a lot better. So, and like we kind of like have gone through like a little mini, like kind of new honeymoon kind of phase. But we've also had its stress test a little bit because we also got 3 kids. So
Yeah.
just life itself is like also put stress on. Okay, like we're trying some new things. Like we're trying. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. I know it's hard when you're like, especially if you're like really like staring down the gun of separation. You're thinking about the expenses, but it's
Mhm.
one of those things where you know it's worth it to.
Awesome.
It feels like a year ago. It's like, oh, I was like in my office upstairs, like sleeping on an air mattress, and it's like, oh, things are better now. It's like
Yeah.
I still know that it's like I would definitely recommend it to guys that are like on that last like go at it, like it's your last ditch effort. I think
Mhm.
it's definitely good for that, but I also think it's one of those things too where you can benefit from it just if you're um feeling strained in the relationship. Like even if you just know like, oh, hey, my wife's not happy. She said like, she wished the relationship was better. I just like to thank you guys. That definitely was. There's a lot of programs out there, especially once the internet figures out that you're like doing searches about separation and stuff. You get bombarded with every program known to man. Um, but it was nice that to stumble upon you guys and it actually be exactly what I needed in that moment. So it was actually helpful.
That's awesome, Conrad. Well, sir, it's great catching up with you. I love
Yeah.
your energy.
I was in a rough spot in my marriage where my wife wanted to separate,
Mhm.
um, and was just wanting to do whatever I could to do my part to fix it. The big thing is like my wife kind of was just saying like she didn't really feel like she was in love with me anymore.
Mhm.
Um, she didn't know how to move past some resentment that she had.
Mhm.
Um, those were some of the big issues. And I was trying to figure out how to give her space, but also how do we work together to make this better or get to a point where she wanted to make it better because she was kind of at a spot where she didn't know whether she wanted to work things out or not. And so it was, like, oh, I'm going to buy some flowers
Mhm.
or, try to write a note, apologize, um, kind of the textbook movie kind of things you think to do, like some gestures
Mhm.
to let her know that I did care. Um, but those just weren't cutting it. So there's just deeper things that we had to dive into. Yeah, I like and I've done some online counseling before. I actually like it better than in person in a lot of ways because having the option to be able to like text or voice memo like
Mhm.
whenever you're actually feeling it instead of trying to like sit in an awkward room and try to remember like, oh, what was I feeling then? Right
Yeah.
now I just feel like I'm sitting on this awkward couch. I find that helpful, and Diane is very good about getting back and listening, um, and giving action steps instead of just being like, "Oh, you poor thing."
Yeah.
There's enough care, but also enough push there to actually make some progress.
Okay. Now, since you said you did some like other stuff before and you kind of like hinted at it, what kind of didn't like go over well with other stuff before compared to now?
Some of that was more just personal work. It wasn't focused on um, our marriage in particular. That was more after my daughter died. I had done some counseling and stuff to
Mhm.
um, kind of deal with that,
Mhm.
kind of on an individual level. Um, and some of it was me and my wife that had to work through it together some too, because kind of looking back, it's like, oh, that was partially a moment where it both bonded us together, but at the same time, like it also was something that I don't think we both kind of like moving through life after that point a little bit separate. And as the years went on and kept getting us further and further apart.
Mhm.
Um, so some of it was kind of realizing that like, oh, like what I had done in the past, kind of working on myself, there was more work that needed to be done to learn how to actually like emotionally connect with my wife again after kind of burying my head in the sand and work and um, trying to kind of run away from past problems and past patterns.
Mhm. Okay.
I mean, things were definitely rocky at first, with me and my wife. But Diana definitely gave us, she gave me some good tools. Um, really helped me know like, hey, like no matter what happens, like here's what you need to do. And like if she doesn't want to, you know, work on it, that's on her, not you, which kind of it definitely helped keep keep me pushing forward. Because instead of it just being like, oh, if it doesn't work out, woe is me. It's like, okay, like here's what to do. I'm gonna push forward, and either we grow closer together again, or it's just gonna be like, okay, like I got to move on from the situation. Um, luckily, uh, within a few weeks, we're kind of able to. Well, within a week, we were able to kind of like not have to talk so much about the separation. Like we kind of were like, okay, let's like give this 30 days. Like I'm gonna work on some stuff. You're gonna work on some stuff, and through that time, like things definitely did get a little bit better, a little bit better. And it was helpful to have Diana to kind of talk about things instead of like trying to force things to happen. It's like, okay, I can have this outlet over here to talk to Diana about like, oh, this is what I'm feeling. Um, this is what I'm working through, and I could actually work on it. And not trying to work on it and fix my marriage at the same time with somebody that wasn't quite ready to hear my emotions, and I needed to practice expressing them too in a way that she could receive. Honestly, like at that point, I don't even know if I had expectations. It's more like preparing for the worst
Hmm.
was kind of how I felt. It was like more like I don't know what to do necessarily. Like I know I need to do something, but in terms of like my expectations of what would happen, um, there was part of me that like, oh, it'd be nice. I hope this does work out. But a lot of it was more feeling like, what if this doesn't work out? And really trying to like grapple that. But that also gave me like the fuel to be like, okay, let's take a stab at this, like to really like don't try to just do it on my own. Let me actually get some help. It's definitely a lot better. So and like we kind of like have gone through like a little mini like kind of new honeymoon kind of phase. But we've also had like had it stress test a little bit because we've also got 3 kids. So
Yeah.
just life itself has like also put stress on, okay, like we're trying some new things, like we're trying some new patterns and trying to break old patterns. And like it's been cool to see like how we get stressed and with like work or just kids, you know, traveling, and both recognize like, oh, this is what happened last time. Like this is what would have happened, you
Mhm.
know, last year if we were in this situation. But I was like being able to both want it to work out differently and be like, okay, here's what I'm feeling in this moment. And, you know, actually hearing each other instead of just getting mad. She voiced it, but so it was, I wasn't really hearing it. For me, it was like, ah, we're busy. It's just stress. Oh, it's just this, you know, it kind of brushed under the rug. Um, and not realizing like, oh, wait, this is like a serious thing. Like I haven't um been fully there emotionally. Um, and it's really built up over years. Um, and there was some damage there that had to be undone. And luckily, like we're both like have been able to talk about a lot of those things, um, and really made a lot of progress on actually like connecting and being much happier. And even my wife, like she's going through some counseling on her own, which is good. Like she's like knows that it's not just like not putting it all on me, but she's like, oh, like she's found out she's codependent, and like being able to talk about that together, be like, oh, like she's realizing like, oh, some of these things I was mad at you about, I'm actually mad at myself about,
Mhm.
and taking it out on you. So um, it's nice to be able to talk about that together and work on it together. So it's like we're drawing closer there. It's like, yeah, we're still kind of messed up people, but we, you know, we both like want to help each other through it. The couples check-in was a big thing. It was a really good tool. Um, Even though it was really awkward at first, it was really good. Um, and also just gleaning from Diana's experience, like my wife definitely has had a rough childhood, and so Diana was able to like speak into that. It's like, hey, like you know, she probably doesn't feel safe. She's got a lot of safeguards put up, and kind of having that mindset, um, and understanding like essentially my wife's perspective from somebody else was helpful to like be able to separate all the emotions and history from it and just be like, okay, I got to um, see my wife and like what she's going through in that moment, and not just try to be upset that like she didn't respond the way I was hoping she would, but understanding like, oh, this is what you're feeling in that moment. Um, there's one thing that like I've over the past week that Diane has had me do, which is kind of like having 7 areas of my life that I'm kind of checking in on. So it's like family, friendship, health, and you write down what's going good, what's going bad, but then you also write down like a specific action step and put it on your calendar for a way to fix the bad.
Mhm.
And that's been really good for someone like me. That's a very much like I love to get my to-do list done. Like I love getting that done. So making it to where I've got a very specific, um, kind of like to-do list for emotional things is helpful. So I'm kind of surprised how much progress I've made in such little time. Like for me, I was kind of like, oh, great. Is this going to be like, I'm going to get some help, but then I'm going to be like a year from now still sweating. Like, is this going to end in divorce? Like, or is this like a separation? Are we going to have to like, are we going to be discussing like, hey, we're going to, you know, act like this was a separation for a year, see you later kind of deal. Um, but it's amazing. Like, luckily my wife's been very like responsive and like been willing to like, um, kind of count the cost of like how bad it would be to go through that. Um, which was early on. I think she was so mad that she didn't really care about the cost. She was kind of like, whatever, you go find somewhere to live, like do this, and we start, then she starts like counting the cost, like, oh, financially, this is what this looks like. Um, like emotionally for the children, this is what this looks like, and we were able to both be like, hey, let's try to make this work at least. Like, let's give this a fighting chance, before calling it quits and just putting a huge crater kind of in our life's timeline. Um, it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's like in some ways it's myself.
Mm.
It's like overcoming like my own like my old patterns like of how I was handling things. Like actually like looking like, oh, I'm burying myself in work to like because I didn't deal emotionally with the death of my daughter. I didn't want to deal with um the emotions of my wife or even like my kids at times. Um because I just, you know, felt like I needed to work and provide, and I need to do that. I'm good at that. And it's like, no, I needed to get better at connecting with people emotionally and actually face that head on.
It's awesome. And how are you doing on that front? Do you feel like?
Much better. I mean, it's definitely like it's one of those things that's like I've got to overcome years and years of built-in patterns, and but it is nice like after like seeing the rewards from it. It's like, oh, it's not a bad thing. It's once you got some tools, um and you practice it some with your spouse too, like, and once that environment's better to where that's a safe space, like it definitely helps. um it's also like it's kind of weird now with like my guy friends, because like for me I feel like I'm ready to like have more serious conversations than they're it's like, hey, we can talk about our feelings, like, nah, nope, we're gonna talk about the game instead. And it's like, oh. It's like I've definitely made some progress, but it's like also, um you kind of see how big of an issue that is culturally for men,
Yeah.
not not letting that be a part of yourself. I think they've been really good. She's really good about pacing it. Um, I've always been like very much like give me more.
Mhm.
Um, I like having like give me an action step and it's like I'll run with that. I know some people it takes longer. Um, that definitely worked really well for me. Uh, just like having something to work on, and luckily it worked very quickly with my wife, because I think she saw that I was trying new things and I was reaching outside of myself,
Mhm.
which helped her trust it more instead of it being. I mean, she had a drug addict for a dad, so she was very skeptical. She's very skeptical of people when they make changes, whether it's going to stick or not. So knowing that, like, oh, he's trying some very different things, Like this isn't just him putting on an act. This is like, oh, this is like trying to actually make a real change. It feels
Awesome.
like it feels like a year ago. It's like, oh, I was like in my office upstairs, like sleeping on air mattress, and it's like, oh, things are better now. It's like
Yeah.
it's still I still know that it's like there's a lot of work that has to go into a relationship, but it's also like, oh, like hey, it's worth it to build towards something instead of letting it fall apart and
Mhm.
get to the point where it's like, oh, the person I care most about would rather live without me than live with me. Yeah, I would highly recommend it. I know it's hard when you're like, especially if you're like really like staring down the gun of separation, you're thinking about the expenses, but it's
Mhm.
one of those things where you know, it's worth it to actually get some help. And if things have gotten that bad, you need the help. It's like if you knew how to fix it, you would have already fixed it or figured it out or stumbled on fixing it.
Mhm.
It helps um, having people that care and know. And like even for me, like I'm a Christian. Like for me, like I found this actually more helpful than a lot of the Christian marriage books that I've read and tried because it was so much more about like pray together and do this. And it's like, yeah, there's some good things to that. And like a lot of them are similar to a lot of the action steps I got from Diana, but it's different from like, let's just take that out of it. Let's like just make this about the relationship and actually connecting with that person. I would definitely recommend it to guys that are like on that last like go at it like it's your last ditch effort. I think
Mhm.
it's definitely good for that, but I also think it's one of those things too where you can benefit from it just if you're um feeling strained in the relationship. Like even if you just know like, oh hey, my wife's not happy. She said like, she wished the relationship was better. Uh I think it'd definitely be worth diving into a program like this earlier to benefit the relationship before it gets bad too. Like it works and it's helpful. It's like even if your ultimate goal of getting back together with your wife weren't to work out, you come out of it knowing that you can stand on your own 2 feet and know that you gave it a shot, babe. It didn't work out, but you can move on, you know, and you have better tools. You know that like your next relationships are going to be better, and hopefully you've taken those tools and used them to build the relationships around you to where you have a good support system.
It's awesome.
So, and then it's also great when it does work out. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, worst case scenario, I can stand on my own, but at the same time, it's like it's great that it did work out, and like I can actually have it work out the way I always hoped it would. I like Diana a lot, especially just her style. Like she's very like a straight shooter, which I think is really helpful. I don't really enjoy being coddled when it comes to like if things are falling apart. Like I want someone to just like, hey, like if I'm screwed up, tell me I'm screwed up. Tell me where I'm screwed up and tell me how to fix it. And she does a good balance of um I felt very like heard and understood, but also very like helped in that she had my best interest. It's like having like through this all, I felt like I had a sparring partner that was like ready to help me in the fight. No, I just like to thank you guys. So it definitely was there's a lot of programs out there, especially once the internet figures out that you're like doing searches about separation and stuff, you get bombarded with every program known to man. Um, but it was nice that to stumble upon you guys and it actually be exactly what I needed in that moment. So it was actually helpful.
That's awesome, Conrad. Well, sir, it's great catching up with you. I love
Yeah.
your energy and man, night and day difference. And Conrad, we appreciate you. So I'm gonna let you go now. And man, yeah, I'm now it's like nighttime over here too, and I'm like all amped up. So all right, Conrad,
Good. Yeah.
I appreciate you, man, and I hope you have a good one.
Yeah. Thanks. Have a good night.
Yep. Later.
Bye.